we are going to be doing a stained glass guide today, and so the project that we have going on is for this star. And as we know, in the past few weeks, we've been continuing on with our project. This was the week 2, and right here is the week 1. And so now for the week 3, we're going to be doing this guy. And so what we have to work with here for our star is we've got these 4 glasses. And what I'm probably going to do is do, let's see, 1, 2, 3 different colors to start. And of course, as always, we do want to make sure to get on our apron, make sure we are not going to be messing up our clothes here. And so another thing I want to keep in mind is the orientation of these glasses. So I'm going to want to keep them kind of going in this direction. So I'm going to also kind of put them on here. We're going to be removing these, and we're going to be keeping this side for now. So, and if you're not familiar, these are the vinyl adhesive back templates. So when you peel it up, and it's got that adhesive backing that we can stick onto the glass and use that as our cutting template. And this one, we're probably going to keep this one as the white one, since it won't have really a direction. And the rest of these, let's see, we've got the red, green, and blue. I think I'm going to go ahead and do this one as the blue, and I'll do this one on the far perimeter as the green. And I think that'll come out pretty nice. And you can mix this up any way you want. You could do alternating blue, green. You could do this one red, something like that. Then you'd have all the red, white, and blue for the USA colors. But I think we're going to just be doing blue in this one, and then we're going to do greens on the outside. So, of course, we're going to go ahead and get started here. So we're not going to be using the red for this particular pattern. Okay. So, if you're not familiar too, I want to remind you that this is a part of our Stained Glass Mastery community, where we have a community of people, and we share projects, ask questions, and you know, it's just a good time. So if you're interested in that, it's a free Stained Glass Mastery community. I will link it in the first comment if you'd like to check that out. And Homemade, hey, happy Easter to you and everyone as well. Thank you for joining us today. So we are going to get all of these on here, and as I mentioned before, they are that adhesive back, so you can see they stick really well. Oh, you're actually off the camera there. There we go. So you can see they stick really well. So I'm keeping these. See my glass, I marked it from a previous one of our videos here, and we've got them oriented this way. So I'm keeping all of our pieces oriented the same way, and it's going to give us that nice kind of shooting out effect from the center out. So that is what we are going for here. So we've got the first few pieces down here. And I've got them pretty close together because I want to try to, you know, use as little glass as I can here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and actually just kind of score this off, and then I'm going to separate these, and we're going to keep, that'll help keeping the rest of our glass as a salvage piece. And also, if you are not familiar, we do these live streams every week, Sunday at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. And all of the projects that we do are a part of a monthly kit that we sell. And of course, the patterns are for free and available in the Stained Glass Mastery community. So if you've got glass and you want to go ahead and just use whatever glass you've got, you're welcome to do that. Or if you want to follow along exactly as I am, you can purchase the kit, and that way you'll have exactly what I'm using as you go through each week. So what I like to do here is I like to separate these pieces, and I try to keep at least one of the cuts in line with one of the vinyl templates. And that way it'll kind of save me from having to do another cut later on. And at the same time, you get to separate each piece. So that's the reason why I do like that. And sometimes I like to tap from the back side on the score line, and that will separate the glass. And that, you know, in case you can't quite break it with your hands and you don't want to reach for the grosing pliers, that's a good way to do it. So we've got our last green piece here. You go ahead and separate this one. And then we can move on to the blue. So I'm going to set these aside for the moment, and we're going to go ahead and get the blue pieces cut. So I think for this one we're going to do something similar. And again, this is kind of going in, you know, kind of more random direction, but we're going to sort of assume it's sort of in this direction. And this is a pretty good beginner project because all the pieces are pretty much straight edges except for that little bit in the center around the circle, around the circle. So some of these pieces will have a little bit of a curved edge to cut, but that's really not too bad, all things considered. So for that reason, this is a pretty good beginner project. And if you have any questions, be sure to leave me a comment. I'll be sure to respond to it. And we've been getting many individuals sharing their projects in the stained glass mastery community, so I really enjoy seeing all that. So please continue to do that. And we're going to go ahead and cut this out. We're going to do the same exact thing. So what I like to do is I'll kind of tap it from the backside all the way along that score. That'll just help to separate it little by little until it just separates just like that. All right, so we'll set this aside, and we will separate all of these the exact same way. And if you find that the glass is not quite breaking as easily as you might normally be, you might need to go ahead and oil up your cutter. And what I like to do is I keep this little foam inside of this plastic, and it's just saturated with oil, and I just dip my cutter in there. Okay. Now, I personally prefer to use this pencil grip cutter. I think it's a little bit easier than the others personally. I feel like I have a little bit more control. So that's why I prefer to use them. Not necessarily it's the best one for your case, especially if you might have some sort of hand pain or something like that. You know, you might need to try out a few different ones and just see which one you prefer the most. Okay. So we've got all of our blue pieces now separated. We're not quite done scoring them yet, but I want to go ahead and get all of our colors pretty much out of the way. We've got our last little piece here, and this one again, it's pretty random, so it doesn't really have a direction, so it doesn't really matter exactly where we put it. So for this one, I'm just going to try to cut off a little tiny spot, and again, tapping that breakthrough. There we go. And we are done with our bigger pieces. As long as we don't have any weird breaks here, we are done with all of the bigger sheets. So, again, we are running that scoring wheel right on the edge of that vinyl. Now this circular piece is probably going to be the hardest piece that you cut. The good thing about this vinyl is that we can grind right up to it as a template, and it doesn't come off or anything like that. It works really well. So I really enjoy that. Now we do have our grosing pliers. Whenever the glass is kind of too small for your hands to break, you can use the Burnishing pliers. And you might have a little bit of rough edges, but again, we're going to get that on the grinder. And we can kind of see how that looks. See how, oops, let me go to the close camera right here. You see these little edges, they're a little bit rough, but we're going to take care of all that on the grinder. And so when you get a bunch of little shards like this, I'll take my table brush and I just sweep them right off. Want to try to avoid getting any of that stuff into your hands. Okay, now what I like to do, we're just going to take all these pieces down, and as we cut them, we're going to go ahead and set them onto our pattern, and that'll kind of give us an idea about how far along we are. Now what I also like to do is go ahead and score all of the edges and then go back and break them all. Just like this. It's a very satisfying point when you start to break all the pieces and you're starting to see your finished sort of shape appear before your eyes. And that's it. So we've got our first piece fully cut. And this one goes in this area, so it's sort of like that. And as we cut more out, we will reveal more of that shape in our in this thing right here. It goes about right there. Okay. So we've got all these blue pieces. Again, this is kind of the beauty behind this little pattern. It does have quite a few pieces, but they're really pretty simple shapes to cut, so we're pretty fortunate behind that. Okay. And this, you're definitely going to need your Burnishing pliers, because once you start to separate all the pieces, if you are getting a good yield from your glass, then you are going to, it's going to be very close to the edge, each of your cuts. So the only way really to start breaking it is with these Burnishing pliers. And I use with the flat end on top, and that's how I'll just kind of get that leverage to hold on to the piece and break it along that score line. There's our second, and actually one of these I think will go right there. There we go. So again, just sweeping all that stuff off. And right here is definitely especially where you want to have your apron, because it will protect your clothes from getting all those glass shards on them. And that could be a problem if you go to wash your clothes and kind of gets mixed up with different parts of clothing, and could have a little surprise somewhere. Unpleasant surprise, to say the least. And when you're cutting these little curved parts, you have to kind of move your wrist. For something kind of gentle like this, you can kind of get it with just your wrist. If it was more of a, I guess, a bigger radius that you had to cut, you might have to sort of move your elbow like this, and that will help you to get that nice smooth cut line. And there's really no substitute to just trying it and practicing it many times. That's really what's going to build up your skill for doing those curved cuts. So these patterns that have a nice mix of straight and curved cuts are going to be really helpful in the beginning. And it has sort of been kind of really apparent to me as I've been interacting with everyone in the stained glass mastery community that most people are sort of retired, and this is sort of a secondary passion for them. And so it's really great to hear that. I hope that we can reach out to more people like that, and they can find a good craft like this, be it stained glass or another one. Seems like it's really very popular, especially amongst retired people, maybe with a little more time on their hands to, do projects. But that's not to say if you are not retired that you can't go ahead and get going with one of these projects. Definitely a worthwhile art, a creative outlet, especially if you've got a lot of the monotony of daily life and you want to have a creative outlet. This could be a really good thing for you to try out. And we are on our last blue piece here. And these vinyl patterns really just make it so easy. And we sell them, you know, in the way that you're seeing them. They're shipped out in envelopes. And I have seen some other people making them with, oh gosh, what do they make them with? A Cricut or a Cricut, they call them, machine. So that is also an option if you wanted to try to make one of these yourself. I don't know how those work. I know that for our purposes, we make them in Adobe Illustrator, and then we have a plotter that cuts all these out. But you might have another way that you can make them that could be suitable for you instead of buying them from us. And Cindy mentioned that it's a good stress release for her, and yeah, I get it. I do enjoy our time here every week, get our little project in, and before you know it, the whole wall is going to be covered with projects. So I've really enjoyed seeing that and interacting with everyone in the live stream has been really fun for me too. But there we go. Yeah, sort of a stress release, a creative outlet in a world where it's kind of hard to sort of make time for that stuff. It's maybe more important than ever before to do it. There we are. Okay. And these are extra easy. There's no curve cuts in these. I want to go ahead and see if we can get another angle here on these cuts. So again, just taking that scoring wheel right on the edge of that vinyl. And when the pieces are kind of small, sometimes I'll push with my back thumb, and that will just keep that consistent pressure. And instead of me having to do it all with my scoring hand, I can push a little bit with that hand that's sort of stabilizing the glass. And you just want that even pressure and a little bit of a sound. For most glasses, you'll hear it. Some glasses, whatever reason, I don't know if it's the density of the glass or what, but it just doesn't quite make that little scratching sound. So don't be too worried if you don't hear it. But the vast majority of them, you should hear that little scratching sound. Okay. Got a few more pieces here. Nice straight cuts. Just using it right along that vinyl. And if you don't want to purchase these vinyl cutouts, another thing you can do is just print out the pattern, and you can cut them up with some scissors and just essentially glue them on or some sort of way to trace, transfer that outline of each shape onto the actual glass. You could do it that way. You could print it out and have a light table underneath, and then that will allow you to see that edge of the glass, and you can pretty easily cut that down. And we've got one more piece to cut down here. There we go. All right. And this is especially where you need those grocers when you're just trying to take off a tiny little, maybe 1/8 inch worth of glass. There is no way your hands are going to be able to grab onto that. And don't take that as a challenge. It's just not going to be possible. You're going to be cutting yourself up and making a big bloody mess. So try to avoid that if we can. Okay, so now that we've got all of our pieces cut, what we need to do is bring out our grinder. And I'm going to make a little bit of space here. And we're going to bring this guy out of here. And here you see it. So what I like to do is I'll keep my little water bottle with a hole punched, and I'll just shoot that into the sponge. And before you know it, we are all fully saturated here. And let's see. So now we're just going to take all of our pieces and just pushing it right into that grinding wheel. And that is just going to take away all those rough edges and get us set for applying the foil. And important thing to consider here is that since we've got our vinyl pattern, we can just grind right up to it. It makes it very easy. Very, very easy. And what I want to do is I'm actually going to move all these pieces off once again, because it will be kind of difficult to tell which ones I have done and which ones I have not done yet. So we are going to just move along. And to be honest with you, it's possible that a lot of the pieces you cut will not need to be grinded down, depending on how well you did. I normally tend to just run over everything just a little bit, just in case I don't want to miss anything. So this kind of helps me really be sure I didn't miss anything. And now you are having to push in on the edge of the glass with your fingers. So you might need to wear some gloves here. And the grinder also really touches up these little curved areas in case you didn't get it quite perfect. Since the grinder is, it has a little curve itself, that can help you to really emulate that nice curve in there. So that works out really nicely. And you can see our little pattern filling up. And when you start to remove the glass from the edges, you see that it ends up fitting much, much better on the original pattern. So you're going to start to see a lot of the voids disappear. And if you do have a little bit of voids, it's really not the end of the world. Don't stress out about it too much. A few voids here and there is okay. It could give it a little bit more room for the solder to fall into. And so it's really not a negative impact. It might have a little bit of a cosmetic impact. You'll see a little bit more of a thicker solder area right there. Again, not a huge deal, so don't get too fixated on that specifically. And again, this grinder just cleans up these edges really nicely. And this circle, it was probably the worst of all of them. Kind of gets those little shards sticking out everywhere. And by the time you're done with it, it looks like a nice circle. And especially if you are using your vinyl cutout, I mean, it's cut to a circle, a true circle. So if you go to that cutout and you don't go any further, you don't overgrind or undergrind it, it's going to be pretty much right on, exactly what you want. So that comes out really nicely. Definitely one of the big advantages using these vinyl cutouts. And we are going to get a little bit more water on here. There we go. And the grinder, it does get a little bit messy. So normally I will keep some cardboard boxes sort of around it on 3 sides. So if I was doing this sort of, not in this live stream environment where I need to be on the camera, I would have a box right here, and right here. And that will just keep from all the debris going everywhere. Because if you look over here on the free camera, you can see it sprays a bunch of stuff and some of the glass dust, it just kind of goes everywhere. So that is something to keep in mind if I, wasn't doing the live stream here. I would definitely keep the, the cardboard or some sort of barrier all the way around it. All right, getting these edges knocked down nicely. And before you know it, it'll be about time to start foiling these. And the foiling, I think, is probably the part that takes the longest, because you really have to make sure to burnish everything down. And if you have a really textured glass, that is going to definitely complicate the foiling process a little bit, because it needs to get into all those ridges of that texture. So in our case today, we are using all very smooth textured glasses, and so that will definitely be in our favor for that foiling process. And one thing I did forget to mention too is that if you are using some glasses that have textured on one side, you want to be sure to cut on that smooth side. You'll find out pretty quickly that it's not really working out very well if you do try to cut on that textured side. But you might want to just save yourself the trouble and just look for that textured side before you start cutting, and make sure to cut on that smooth side. And this grinding wheel just takes it down, takes that glass edge really nicely on these curves. Sometimes the curve that you need is actually a little bit of a tighter radius compared to the grinding wheel, the standard radius grinding wheel, that is. And there are some that actually have a little bit of a tighter radius, and you might have to use one of those if you, if you have an area that's got those really tight radiuses. And so this one, I believe it is a 1-inch diameter, and I believe they have 1/4-inch diameter wheels. So, and sometimes they even fit on top of this one. So it's kind of just right there all the time in case you need it. I don't have one on this one. I haven't had a need in doing these projects anyway, but I definitely have had a need on more of our studio side. And in case you don't know me, my name is Adrian, and I'm a part of the Cavallini Stained Glass Studio, where we work on hundreds of stained glass panels every single year. And so I'm trying to bring some of that knowledge to you and get you started in doing this craft that we know and love. And so we are, look at it from this side, you can see that color, but we need that template to see where to grind up to. So this works out very well. And this, believe it or not, is our last piece to grind down. And so we are done with the grinding. So we've got all of our pieces sort of on our pattern here. And what we need to do now is to go ahead and remove the vinyl and stick it down to our pattern. We could try to use these in the future, and I probably wouldn't guarantee that you'd get a second use out of it, but it might be worth a shot. Our patterns do come with a secondary pattern, so that you can use on another project. And Cindy mentioned that she likes to cut the pattern out and traces it with a contrasting paint pen, and then coats the lines with a thin layer of Vaseline, and that works really good. So that's another option in case you wanted to save a little bit on the, on the patterns. You can just print it out, cut it out, and trace it with that paint pen. And it's good that she mentioned the contrasting paint pen, because some glosses you won't be able to see with the same marker or pen color. For example, you're using a red marker, it'd be kind of hard to see that on a red glass. Or if you're using a black marker on a black glass. So having a few of those, normally black and white or silver will pretty much get you through most of them. I know that for us, again, the black, it's really just that black glass that you don't see it on. And that's why we have a silver around also. But I find the vinyl cutouts are a little bit easier. It's just less steps. You don't have to cut them out. You don't have to, trace them and everything. So that's why I personally really enjoy using these vinyl cutouts. But if you do want to save a little bit, that's a great option actually, to avoid needing to do that, to purchase them, I should say. And so we are making pretty good progress there. As we take our vinyls off, I'm going to go ahead and put them onto our pattern here. We can kind of start to see everything come together. And I am very happy with the progress so far. There we go. And that's kind of the beauty behind this star pattern. It's a good pattern that you can use pretty much with just about any shape. I'm sorry, with any glass. So if you have scrap glass, this is a really good one that you can kind of mix it up and do, whatever you think looks best. And for the purposes of our kit here, I did it with the green, white, and blue. So we've got one more blue piece to take apart here. And we're already starting to see the colors of our star coming together. All right, go ahead and put our white down. And that circle came out pretty good. And so this is how I like to put all of the little vinyls down. But see, they're still a little bit sticky. So you could probably get away with using them at least one more time instead of having to break into your brand new set on the other side. But you could also always still use them as a tracing pattern, just like Cindy mentioned. There we go. So we've got our little star here cut out, and now we need to start to clean it all up for the copper foil to adhere properly. So we are going to go ahead and get to that. Now for this, you're going to need a rag of some sort. I normally just use a cotton rag. And I normally just use a blue glass cleaner. You don't really need to be too specific here. Just about anything will work. And again, we're going to take all the glass off and replace it onto our pattern as we get the pieces done. Now what we're doing here is we're taking off all this glass dust on the perimeter. It is extremely important to remove all of that debris because that will keep your copper foil from adhering properly. So we are going to just take this all the way up and down the full edges. And before you know it, that piece will be nice and clean and ready. And as we copper foil, I'll kind of look through just to make sure I didn't leave anything, because it can be, kind of difficult to get it all on the very first try. So just is a good idea to go ahead and check back over as you are foiling. And the most important spot that we want to clean here are those edges. So that's why I kind of start with the edges and then clean the faces of the glass and then go back and do a quick wipe around the edges one more time. And we are going to need for these to be pretty much dry by the time that we get to the foiling. And normally by the time you are done with them, the ones that you started with are pretty much dry. You can, of course, go back and just dry them off really quickly with your the dry part of the rag that you're using. All right. You can see all that debris just really cakes on there, and it comes right off pretty easily. There we go. You can see kind of that debris collecting on the rag here, and we much prefer it to be there than on our glass. There we go. All right. Little pieces are coming out nicely. And for the foiling, we're going to be using the 7/32 black backed again. And it's kind of just my most commonly used. I like it a lot. Works really well. We use it from Edco. It's where we purchase all of our materials and for the copper foiling, and we sell their products, and their products are the ones we use for these demonstrations. And I've been pretty happy with their foils. It works pretty good. I do have a hard time getting some of their products sometimes. Fortunately, sometimes it takes us 8+ months from the date of order to actually get the products. So occasionally we have to use some other manufacturers, like Benari. Benari is another one that we'll use. Other than that, those are pretty much the two main ones as far as foil materials go that we like to use. And there we go. This is our last blue piece. Getting it all cleaned up. There we have it. And now for our little circle piece. And it's hard to see because this one is white, but it has a lot of that glass dust on there. So I'll probably go over this one a few times just to be sure. This one, of course, is in a very important spot, being that it's right smack in the center here. There we go. Okay, so you can kind of have a good idea of what the little star here is going to look like so far. And so what we're going to go ahead and do is move this to the side. I am noticing there's quite a bit of debris left here. There we go. Get all that swept off. And we can go ahead and bring out our foiling. So what I like to do here is I use the foil caddy and I run it into a creator's foiler here. And so I use the, this is where I keep my FID and my X-Acto blade, and I keep all the different foils with the different backings, the silver, and this one is the copper. And so I pretty much use 7/32, pretty much. That's really the main one that I use. So let's see if we can kind of give you a good line of sight here. So what I like to do is I actually use these lead dikes here, and I will snip them like that. Okay, so what I like to do is, you take your glass, and I like to check it over. It's going to look a little bit duller, but that's not glass stuff. That's just the grounded edge of the glass. And what we have to do is you simply just insert the glass into the groove, push it into the foil. There's a little bearing, and it kind of just spins on that bearing. And as you run it through, it is just pushing that foil onto the edge of the glass and centering it. So this is the way that I most prefer to foil. It is, of course, more costly than just doing it by hand, because you need to buy this tool. But I think it saves a lot of time and it gives really good results. So I'm going to go ahead and fold this over, zip it up to the next corner, fold it over, zip it up, and then fold this over. And you can see it's got a pretty nice foiled surface on this side and a nice even surface on this side too. So that's why I really like to use this. And so the other great thing about it is that it can be done, of course, on straight edges like you just saw, but also these curved edges. So you can just stick it in there and just spin this thing right on there. And it does have a little bit of a learning curve. You kind of need to, as you get to the middle, as you get to the beginning, you kind of have to pull it out a little bit, snip it, and then overlap, just like that. Because if you don't, it can start to knock the foil off as you go to overlap it. But other than that, I mean, no matter what, all the foilers kind of have that same problem. And it's easily avoidable if you just pull it out right there towards the end and then overlap it by hand. So don't let this stop you if you don't have this item to get started. But especially if you have been, maybe foiling for a little bit and you're feeling like it might be a little bit tedious and you are wondering if there's a better way, I personally think the answer to that question is yes, and that this is it. So shout out to creators for this foiler. And this is the creator's brand foiler. We do sell it. And the only, I have heard a lot of the people from the Single Glass Mastery community mention that there are other foilers that honestly don't work as well. And I was kind of surprised to hear that. I thought they were all pretty much the same, but evidently they're not. So that I was kind of surprised to hear, to be honest with you. And now the way that they're traditionally meant to be used is with the foiler being in one hand and the glass that you're foiling in the other. But I much prefer to anchor it to the 2x4 like you see here, and to use both hands to kind of maneuver the glass. And that, I think it's a little bit safer, so you don't cut yourself as easily. And I think it provides a little bit of a better overall product. So that's just kind of from my perspective, kind of the best way to use these. And I would be interested to hear if there are kind of some other setups other people have. But this is really my favorite way. I know a lot of people think that maybe just doing by hand is faster. But honestly, I know at least for myself, I don't think I could ever do it this fast. Just straight up, this fast and this accurate and this consistent over such a long period of time. Now today we are using the black backing, and that means that we will be applying a black patina to it, to the solder. And I keep saying that we're going to be trying a new patina soon. I just actually keep forgetting to bring one with me. So I will be eventually remembering to do that. I want to especially do the copper patina. I like it. I like the way it looks. I don't think it looks quite as good as the shiny. I think it's a little bit different than the shiny, copper foil finish. But it's cool. It's still pretty cool. So I like to try out the different finishes from time to time. The black finish is kind of just the most consistent, almost the safest look with all the colors of glasses and across all of the different subjects and pictures and all that stuff that you can make with stained glass. It seems to just be kind of really neutral and blend in well, and not necessarily be a big part of the overall product. Mostly just really bringing everything together instead of it sort of standing out as a separate element. So I think personally that's kind of the way I see the black patina solder and the black backed finish of the foil. Would be interested to hear what y'all most prefer for your projects. This just seems to be the most common one I see and the most common one I personally choose. And so we are making some pretty good progress here. Let's see. Once I get this one down, we can go ahead and check out all of our pieces. So we can kind of see here, we've got quite a few of them already foiled. And we are going to go ahead and switch back over here. And I think you can still see that. Okay. So we've got a few more pieces here to do. Go ahead and put this one on this side. And we can kind of check out to see all of the projects so far. And I think everyone really likes that shiny look of the copper foil before you actually end up soldering it. I always like that. Kind of too bad it ends up getting covered. And then if you do that copper patina, it just really isn't the same. It isn't the exact same. It does still look good. It's just not the same. But what can you do? Maybe one day they will come out with a glossy, shiny finish patina that will emulate the look of the foil. That could be interesting. Okay. Alrighty. Got a few more pieces here. I think we'll take care of all of our blue pieces, and then we'll work from the inside out and do our green pieces last. All right. And one thing to note also when foiling is you don't want to lift them up too many times. You kind of want to maybe lift, stick it down if it's in the wrong spot, lift it up maybe once or twice. And if you end up doing too many, you could have a bit of an adhesion problem. I don't exactly know what happens to that adhesive, but it seems to start to lose its adhesion, if you will, its grab or its potency, if you kind of work it too many times. So that is something to consider. There we go. All right, that's our last blue piece. And of course, once we get through with the foiling, we will go on to burnishing. Another extremely important part of this project and all copper foil projects. There we go. Sometimes the pieces that are bigger are not, actually pretty much all the time, it's a little bit misleading, but the bigger pieces are actually a little bit easier than the very tiny and almost hard to handle or tedious little pieces. So if you are looking at doing a project that has some bigger pieces, I think you might be pleasantly surprised, especially if you're used to doing them where the pieces are really small, like less than maybe 2 inches by 2 inches. That can get pretty tedious. And fortunately, these are, they're not really huge panels with hundreds of pieces, but it is possible to get there. And once you are, you certainly need another level of patience. And you want to still take just as much care as you would on a small little panel. You don't want that to be failing in the future. Okay. So this is our last piece to foil. then we are ready to begin burnishing. And I do hope that you are enjoying these full, the full projects here from start to finish. It's been, I think, working out pretty well so far. And Bobby, hey, thanks for joining us. Happy Easter to you too. And so we are pretty much done applying foil. I am going to keep this out in case we have any sort of injuries to the actual foil as we burnish. And if you look closely, this is the one I prefer to use, this FID, this burnishing tool. It's got this flat end, and you can use that to get into all of the little textures if you have a textured glass. In our case, we are doing just straight, smooth glass. So it's not as necessary, but it is the one that I most prefer to use. And Two Twins mentioned that they are having some issues with copper foiling, but are doing just fine with the leading, and not quite sure what's going wrong with the solder. Well, let me know what specifically problems you're having, and I might be able to help you narrow down the root cause of those issues. As I think about it, some people might have some issues maybe with the temperature of the iron not being hot enough. And so for example, the 60-40 solder is a lower melting point, meaning it gets more runny from a cooler iron and compared to a 50-50 or a lead-free solder. So I most prefer to use a lead-free solder, which is kind of the hardest one to use, but you have the advantage of not having, lead exposure and all that. But you have to use a pretty hot iron. So that is one thing to keep in mind. And so the problem is not being smooth. Well, it's possible your iron's not hot enough, if I had to guess. It's possible that maybe you're not using enough flux. It's possible that your copper foiling, if it's old, it could be oxidized, and the solder will not stick as well to it. Let's see, what else could be a problem? If anyone else has any ideas that could be a problem there. Mentioned that you use a 60-40. It sounds to me like the iron might not be hot enough. And yeah, that's kind of probably where I would start. And so a couple quick things about foiling is you want to burnish the edges first, and then you want to go back and burnish the faces, because you do not want to trap any air or have any air bubbles where some flux or something else could kind of get in there and start to separate the glass and the foil. So you do want to keep that in mind. So you'll see here I start on the edge all the way around, and then we put it down and do the face. And you can see how well this foiler, it just applies that very evenly. And it comes out really quite nicely. I'm very pleased with this. Almost looks like a machine did it. There we go. Go ahead and flip it on the other side. And again, this is a nice smooth gloss, so it's pretty easy to get all that foil down nice and smooth. And it's a little bit harder to create an injury in case you hit it. And so the 350 temperature, honestly, I think that might be too cold. I think it's supposed to be in the 400s. Now, I personally use an iron that doesn't have a temperature control, but from what I remember, just off the top of my head, it is supposed to be in the 400s. And I'm sure you're using flux too. Oh, another thing that could be the problem, if you are using a fan and you are shooting it right at you or kind of near your hands as you're working, you could sort of prematurely cool that solder, and that could be causing some problems too. I have had that problem before. So instead of using a fan that shoots air towards you, you can actually just do the fan the other direction to sort of absorb the air and move it away from you. And that could help solve the problem if you're shooting that fan towards you. No fan. Yeah, it might be the temperature. How old is that copper foil? Is it pretty new? Or did you buy it used? Or was it given to you, something like that? Yeah, give that a shot. And runs down the sides. So this is only on the edge, or is this in the middle that you're having the problem? And another thing, Two Twins, is that you can, if you join the Stained Glass Master community, you can post pictures there, and that will, you'll have a whole army of hobbyists and craftsmen that can probably even maybe give you better advice than I could. I do see people posting in there different issues that they're having. It's all over. Yeah, try that iron temperature. And right here's a spot where, did we actually, oh no. Sometimes it just bends a little bit awkwardly. I thought that occasionally when using the foiler, you will have a few areas that might be unevenly foiled, and you can do a little repair and just reapply right on top of the old foil, after burnishing it. And right here is actually a pretty decent example. See how let's actually look over here to the close camera. You see how right here on this bottom edge, it's a little bit thin, and on the same side, on the back side, it's quite a bit thicker. So that is less than ideal, not a huge deal. I am going to go ahead and do a little bit of an additional application just to demonstrate that. And this way we will be able to see kind of how I like to do these little repairs. I don't like to overcomplicate it. I just like to put a little bit of foil right on top of the old one. And that has worked out really well for me. Just like that. And now we can see over here on the close camera, it is pretty even now. And someone was asking if it's possible to over-burnish. And I would say the only thing about over-burnishing is that if you start to destroy the foil, and so I don't do it too hard, especially on really textured gloss. But as far as pushing the foil into the glass, so long as you're not getting any damaged foil, I would say that that's probably really not a problem. And Cindy mentioned that if she had lotion on her hands from earlier in the day, it transferred to the foiling tape, and that gave her some issues. And she makes sure to wash her hands with just Dawn's dish soap before starting. So you might want to check that, Two Twins, if maybe you have some sort of contamination on your hands that might be transferring to that foil and then making it hard to solder for some reason. And Bobby mentioned that going too slow can make it too hot and runny. And so, yeah, that's another thing. You could try messing around with the speed at which you are sort of running your bead. And you might have a better result going a little bit faster, or maybe a little bit, you're going maybe too fast and you need to go a little bit slower. That's a possibility too. All right. There we go. Making some good progress here. Got all of our green pieces done. We have now moved on to the blue pieces that we are burnishing. And before you know it, it will be time to solder. And this piece, we are going to be hanging it using some wire. And here is another thing I want to point out before we move on. Go ahead and look over here on the close camera. So we can see right here, we have a little bit of a non-smooth transition from where we overlapped. So what we're going to go ahead and do is just cut that off with the X-Acto blade. It doesn't take much. And when we go back to solder, it'll look much, much better. All right. Oops, let me go ahead and switch back over here. There we go. And we are making some good progress here. And the type of solder we're planning to use today is from Amerway. Actually, no, we're using one from Victory Metals, because we are using the lead-free solder today. And so far as I am aware, Victory is the only one that makes lead-free. So that is something to consider. There we go. Pushing this down all the way around. And I mentioned that we're using the Victory metals. I enjoy their solder, Victory and Amerway. I haven't had a problem with either of theirs. Those are pretty much the two that we buy from. And I don't have a problem with either of them. So I've been pretty happy with those two. I'm not sure what the Hobby Lobby sells. I haven't checked that out. I assume that it's probably just fine though. Okay. And we've got a few more pieces here to do. And when you do burnish it down, you're going to kind of see the foil, it really smooths out, and it just, if it does have any texture on that glass, it almost looks like it takes the same shape as that texture. So that seems to work out really nicely. And you can see our little panel coming together little by little. Make sure to do our edge first as usual. We're going to go ahead and fold these over. There we go. Now when we start to solder, we are going to first tack them together at the joints, and that will ensure that we will not have any movement as we go to solder the runs of foil in between each of the joints. And we've got our last piece here. Oh, and Bobby mentioned that the Hobby Lobby, they sell the Studio Pro solder. I don't know if it's any good. I did have a few people last week were mentioning that they really dislike the Studio Pro foil, that it's the worst kind. I haven't personally used it, but they seem to prefer the Edco 2, so I think I'll probably just stick with the Edco one instead of trying to overcomplicate things. There we go. And our last piece is nicely burnished. All right. So now we are done with this. We can go ahead and turn on our iron. And I am going to also turn on the, let's see here. Let's make a little bit of room. We don't need the scissors, the grooving pliers. Let's get the fit out of the way. All right. Now we are going to need this still. We are going to need some wire. I'm going to go ahead and put on some gloves. Try to keep the chemicals off my hands if possible. I am going to go ahead and get out the flux. Let's see. There we go. All right, got our little flux container here. And of course, we need the solder. How can I forget the solder? And you can see here, let's see if we can get you on the close camera. I know that it's reversed, but it's the 97.3 lead free right there. I need to reverse that back for y'all. You can see it better. Okay, so this is our little star, and we are going to want to get it very carefully, and we're trying to fit it to be pretty much the shape of the pattern underneath it, because I know that one I did on the computer and it is a true reflected shape, meaning it's all symmetrical. So we want to get that pretty much as close as we can. And so this is looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with this. Let me see if I can show you a little close-up. You can kind of see I've got a little bit of a gap right here. I think I can maybe move that in a little bit more. But other than that, I'm pretty happy with it. I think it's looking pretty good so far. So we're going to go ahead and switch over while we're waiting for the iron to heat up. Let's see, how we doing? It is getting there. Okay, so what we're going to want to do, take a little bit of this flux, and you don't need much. We're just going to try to dab it on there, trying not to move these pieces around because we want to keep it the shape that it is. And if we get, a few joints here and there soldered, we will be good to go. Try to get this thing nicely. Okay, so what we're going to do now, let me go ahead and grab my fume extractor. There we go. Go ahead and turn this on. All right. And let's go ahead and check this, see what we're looking at. Oh yeah, that's nice and hot. So again, we are going to try to tack these joints in and let all those fumes just run right into our extractor here. And I am just feeding in this solder pretty heavily here. We're not shooting for it to be nice and pretty yet. We are just getting it all tacked together. And let's go ahead and add a little bit more flux here. And this one is pretty well tacked together. Almost missed one there. I'm going to go ahead and tack in all these other corners because these are very these are just barely tacked on into one joint there. So a little bit more will be helpful. There we go. And now, with just these joints tacked here, we can see that it is holding together very nicely. And what we're going to go ahead and do now is see if I can get a bit of a different angle here for you. And we are going to go ahead and lay down we're going to really flex this thing up now. And we're also going to go ahead and tin the perimeters. So we're going to flex all those perimeters. There we go. So we're going to run this. We're going to try to get some solder onto all of the foil. And again, this is not meant to be the prettiest looking yet. We need for it to look, we just need for it to be connected first so that it will all hold together well when we flip it. When we come back, we can pretty it up nicely. There we go. And this thing is getting pretty hot, so I might be switching over to my heat-resistant gloves in just a moment, especially as you make your way around it and the whole thing gets heated up just like that. Okay, so now I am going to go ahead and get my heat-resistant gloves on, which have been a major game changer for me. And we are going to go ahead and flip this guy over, get our first, actually we're going to go ahead and do a nice, try to get it looking really nice on this side. And might have to do a few touch-ups, especially after edge beating. But if we can just really get this thing pretty much almost all the way there, I think it'll be in our best interest here. So, got it all flexed up. Iron is nice and hot. We'll start loading on some solder. And the key here is to try to keep a nice wet edge. That will reduce the amount of ridges and sort of unpleasant looking areas, especially in the joints. Now it's going to be impossible to run it completely wet edge to wet edge no matter what, but you can at least, just do your best trying to keep it on the wet edge as much as possible. And so sometimes you really have to just heat it up, and if it kind of looks flat, you might need to add a little bit more solder. because you kind of want that rounded edge, a nice rounded looking edge. You don't want it to look really flat. Like right here in the middle, it's looking a little bit flat. So I'm going to go ahead and just hit it with a little bit of extra solder. Try to get it to become a nice rounded bead. And I'm kind of tapping around, just trying to remove any of those areas that have those really kind of not great looking ridges. And so we want to finish this side first. And then we're going to go ahead and touch up the front side. We'll do some edge beading, and then we'll do a final touch up. And then we, of course, need to patina it. So we're going to go ahead and tin these perimeters, and we're going to go back and, of course, edge bead, which will kind of make it look a little bit more rounded. Let's load up a little bit more solder onto the iron. There we go. We've got a pretty big mass of solder there. We are going to go ahead and get that when we edge bead it, so no problem there. So tinning these, add a little bit more solder. And this is a Weller 100-watt soldering iron. Gets very hot and stays very hot. Okay, so again, we've got our temperature-resistant gloves. This would be impossible to do without, at least the way that I'm doing it. And what we need to do is flux all of these edges very nicely. Don't need to be stingy with this part. We just need to get them all well coated. And then we will go through and kind of spin this star like I am, but applying solder. Now what I like to do is I like to keep a little stick of solder out like this. And that way I can just grab it with the iron. Just grab a little bit. Let's see. And then I can go back and apply it to the edges. And we're kind of tapping it all the way around. Just trying to get a nice rounded edge. And just taking your time here. And even with these heat-resistant gloves, it is very warm on my fingers. So just be aware of that. And if you can believe it, I used to do this without these gloves. It was a nightmare of burning. So do not do that to yourself. And so this first round, we're doing it on one side. And as you can see, it still needs to be done right here. We did it right here. We still need to do it right here. So we're going to flip it once we've done all of them on this side. Instead of flipping back and forth from each star point, we can do all of the same sort of plane. And then we can flip it and then do all of them on the other plane. And you're just kind of tapping it to get that nice. And this is where we have that huge mass of solder. Probably it's just going to drip off like that. And then we can. And if you do get some solder that drips off onto the ground, onto your table, do not try to use it. You're just going to get a lot of burnt little impurities into your solder. It's not going to look great. It's really not worth trying to save that little, 1 cent of solder. So just, resist. Don't do it. Just get some new solder on there. There we go. So now we've flipped it and we're doing the other side. And it's coming out very nicely. Now we do still need to add a little bit of wire. And I think what we're going to do is kind of twist it up. Well, let's see. We'll take a look at it after we finish this edge beading. And we'll decide exactly where we think it should go. And this one's a pretty simple one to edge bead, since all of the edges are straight. When it gets to be curved, you can have a little bit more of a harder time trying to curve the piece as you are applying the solder. So that can be a little bit more difficult, not the end of the world, just a little bit more of a challenge. Okay, and this is the beginning. So this is the front side. We still need to clean up very nicely. And let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to need to kind of reapply some solder here. Heat this up, get it nice and rounded. If it's too flat, we're going to have to apply a little bit more. So that looks good. And again, I'm using the lead-free solder, so I've got to use this iron very hot. There we go. We just want to get these edges all nicely rounded over. And so I'll kind of just tap along until I get it all nicely rounded over. Now, one thing to keep in mind too is if you're working on a tiny little panel like this, the heat will transfer quite significantly to the other side. And if you had been working on the previous side, it can be very hot on the side that you're working on now, and it can be hard to get that nice rounded edge. So you might have to set it down for a little bit and go back to it. And, you know, not for long, maybe 5 minutes, something like that. Just let it cool down enough to where you can work on that on your side without it sort of falling flat and dripping through again. Got one more of these points to do. Okay. Now that's pretty good. So we want to go ahead and look at the other side. Make sure we've got everything nicely placed. Okay, and this side's looking pretty good. Sometimes you can get little solder droplets from the edge beading, stuff like that. But this looks good. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to install the wire. And let's see what the best way to do that would be. Now, I probably want for this to be the top right here. So what I'm going to do here, this is the back side that we're looking at. I'm going to make a little jump ring like this, and I'm going to intend for it to be about right here, something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and trim off this excess here. I don't need the rest of this wheel, or quill, I should say. Okay, so now what we want to do, I'm probably going to do at least one little spin here, and then do something like this is our goal. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to tack that right at the tip there, and that will give us a good point of reference for the rest of the wire. So I'm just going to solder this up, grab our iron, and again we're going to want to bring a little bit of solder up so we can just grab it with the iron. And our goal here is to just tack this into place. So I'm going to hold it right where I want it, see if I can tack it down. I see some solders on there, but I don't think it quite connected to the panel. Okay, I think it connected that time. Yes, it did. So our little jump ring is connected, even just by a tiny little bit of solder. And so now we can go through and sort of solder this in place where we want it, and then we can cut off the excess. So I'm gonna kind of hold it right here. I might even go ahead and just cut off this excess while I'm here. There we go. I'm gonna go ahead and flex this just like that. And we're gonna go ahead and drip a healthy solder onto here. And this will keep this right exactly where we need it. And what we'll go ahead and do is we'll go ahead and edge bead that in there a little bit better. It's got this big blob of solder there now that we can kind of use to disperse and really connect this wire and really just make it one with the panel here. Just exactly like that. See that? Now that's been fully connected. That will never sever. And we're going to do the exact same thing with the other side now. So I'm going to kind of move this wire into the right spot. And that looks pretty good. Let's see, I'm going to probably want to kind of make this go a little bit further if I can. And then we're going to go ahead and cut this down just like that. And now we can go ahead and solder that down. And we're going to do another tack solder down at the end. And then we're going to kind of really put a lot again like we did before. And then with that bigger blob of solder, we can kind of edge beat it into the right spot. And this one's already pretty much there. We're just going to want to clean this up. Maybe remove a little bit of excess. There we go. And from the viewing side, you can barely see that wire. So that is ideal for us. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the iron. So this is pretty much our patinaed panel here. So we're gonna go ahead and get all this solder out of the way. And we no longer need these. I'm going to keep the nitrile gloves on for the chemicals. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take our blue glass cleaner once again. And before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get this thing off of here. All right, there we go. Got all that stuff off. Go ahead and spray this thing down. Try to get that flux out of here if we can. And this thing is still very hot, but we can work on it. We're pretty much ready to turn this thing off. And we are just cleaning this up very nicely. Clean up the backside too. Oops, and we have a little bit of a big blob right here. I'm going to want to clean that up. See all that? I'm going to go ahead and take the iron, see if I can get that cleaned up. Not sure what that was. It might have been a little piece of wire or something. Just going to try to smooth this out if we can. Okay, that looks pretty good. We're going to go ahead and finish cleaning this off nicely. tiny little panel. Looks very nice today. Hope that you guys are enjoying this star panel, the week 3 of the April 2025 stained glass kit. And we'll go ahead and clean it off one more time, and then we'll get to applying the patina. And that will be just about the end of this week's project here. Going to use the Novacam Black Patina. And I like this one for the solder. Works really well. Even for the lead-free solder. And when you apply it, you don't have to be, stingy. You want to be pretty liberal with it, pretty heavy on the application here. And what I'll normally do is I'll get it really well coated a first round, and then I'll hit it with another round and let it kind of set. Leave it kind of saturated in the patina. I'll probably go ahead and hit it one more time. Really nicely saturated rag here. And then just really leave it on that patina. Go ahead and hit the edges while you're at it. And probably need to go ahead and apply a little bit more. And again, wearing some gloves because this is an acid. So, you want to be pretty conscientious of your health. Despite your age, no matter how old or young you are, you may think you're invincible, but you want to reduce your exposure to negative stuff as much as possible. And using the gloves is a good way to do that. So again, doing a nice, healthy application here on the back side. Trying to oversaturate all of these surfaces here. And this wire, it's actually a pre-tinned wire, meaning it can also be patinaed. So you might as well do that there too. And our panel is coming out very nicely. So now I'll let that set for just a second while I put this patina away. And then I am going to go ahead and wash it off with our glass cleaner for a final time. And we can check out the finished product here. Make sure to really polish it all up nicely. We got the back side, do the exact same thing. And one thing about stained glass, you kind of have to clean every single individual piece. You can't really just wipe the whole thing if you want it to look really nice and clean. And so with that, we are all finished up with the week 3 of the April 2025 kit here. So again, I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you have any questions, be sure to leave them down in the description. I'll be sure to answer those. And check out the Stained Glass Mastery live stream, Stained Glass Mastery community, where we have tons of free resources, artists who ask questions and answer questions, and a great community to share your own projects. And so I hope to see you there. Again, thank you so much for watching. We will see you next week. For the week 4, it's a seashell of the April 2025 stained glass kit. Goodbye.